Speaking of documentaries, docuseries documentaries, there's a film that Bruce and I saw that comes out on Hulu. By the time you guys are listening to this, and you may have already seen this on Hulu. It's on Hulu VOD virtual cinemas, meaning virtual cinemas and drive-ins. It's this movie, it's a documentary called The Painter and the Thief. Anyone who watches the trailer to The Painter and the Thief will be automatically hooked because, first of all, this is one of these stranger things are stranger than fiction. This is just one of the most strangest stories I've ever seen. It's this Czech artist. Her name is Barbara. I forgot her last name, Bruce, but
Crystal Kova.
okay, Crystal Kova, yeah. And she moved from she's a Czech artist. She moved to Norway, right? She moved to
Yeah,
Norway.
she was a Czech artist. She was living in Berlin. She broke up with her then boyfriend to go with a new boyfriend who was a Norwegian, and she moved to Oslo.
Oslo. Okay. So what happened is she's trying to start off her career. She has two couple of paintings at this gallery, and they're both stolen. And one of them is, I think, the centerpiece of her work. This swan, right? The swan. Um,
Swan song. Yeah.
yeah, swan song. Yeah, and it's stolen. And instead of actually like any normal human being, just making sure the crooks, the thieves, get thrown in jail for an inordinate amount of time. She decides, actually, there's footage of it. She, at the hearing of one of the criminals, actually, they were both criminals, but one of the criminals, Bertil, she was so captivated by his presence. I think, if I recall, Bruce, she decided she wanted to actually paint a portrait of him, right? At the
Yeah, well, in the movie, it's kind of a little bit obscure. You're not sure because in the movie, basically, what happens is you see there's footage of them stealing it, so they know who the thieves are, and then they don't have the documentary crew there when she's at the courtroom. They only have like drawings of her,
right,
and
which
then
she
they have like
did.
audio, and in audio she's saying something to her friend like, do you think I should go up and talk to him or something like that? So when I interviewed her, I asked her, I said, well, what was your impulse, or what, like, when did you decide, and all that stuff? And she had actually decided when she went there she was going to ask both of them if they would sit for her to paint them. So that was kind of my first question to her, was like, well, what was your impulse to, instead of just, yeah, like you said, like wanting to, get her stuff back and get them in jail. Her thought was like, I'm going to go out, reach out and connect to these guys. And the one guy isn't there at all, but that Bertil guy is. And
Yeah.
then that's the beginning of the 3-year story.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
directed by this guy named Benjamin Ree, and he, yeah, like Bruce said, he spent 3 years just capturing their lives. And it's one of these things where it's actually not. There are so many life-changing things that I don't even want to talk about within the
Yep.
next 3 years. It's actually covered in I'm sure, in the trailer. What happens to Bertil is just really harrowing. And there's times when you're going to be pulling for the thief and his side of the story. And then there are times when you're going to be pulling for the artist. The reason why it's called The Painter and the Thief is this documentary is set as, in a way, even though they come together as friends, a lot of it is framed as two stories. You see both sides of the coin, and your loyalty sometimes shifts from one to the other. At least that's how I perceived it. And ultimately, it ends up being a really satisfying and very compelling documentary. I'm not going to talk about the finale, but it wraps everything together in a perfect package. So, anyways, Bruce, what else? What did you think of the film?
Very similar. I was drawn. What was really interesting about it too was, I think you see both sides um, kind of assuming they understand what the other person's motives are, but then also being suspicious of the other person.
Right.
And you see that, like you said, that fluctuates over time. The way they relate to each other and the way they think of each other really changes quite a bit. And I was struck throughout this movie. This is a very rare documentary where access, of course, is always a big thing in documentary, right? And interesting arcs and interesting stories to tell. This is one of the very rare ones where it's a super focused, personal kind of a vision of two people that honestly never knew each other before and how they connect and don't connect. And I was thinking as I was watching it, this would be one of those things almost like the 7 Up series, like we were talking about before.
Right.
This could be like a 7 Up series. I could imagine a documentary being made 10 years from now, revisiting both of them and seeing where they're at, and 10 more years and seeing where they're at. Because
Hmm.
you get enough changes in their lives over these 3 years that it's really compelling and makes you interested in both of their lives. And
That's
it's funny, if
awesome.
you go to their Facebook pages now, you can see how recently this movie ends. Like the things that you see at the end of this movie are
Yeah.
very recent, like within like 8 months, maybe something
Yeah.
like
Wow.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I think
And you
that,
can see the things on their Facebook pages, that they were
yeah,
talking about.
there are,
And
I just, oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, just to pull you guys in as far as to watch this documentary, I'm going to actually spoil a couple things. But one of the things that you're going to realize if you haven't seen, I forgot what, Bruce, the name of that invasion movie by How to Invade Next or something, the Michael Moore film. He talked about the prisons
Oh
in
yeah,
Norway,
where
Norwegian
to
prison.
invade next or something like that. Something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, I know what you're talking
they
about.
they shot in the exact same prison in this film, and you get to see how Bertia lives for about a year, and it's very
Mhm.
humane the way the prison. If you haven't seen that Moore film, you can see how that jail. Forgot the name of the prison is actually structured. It looks like he's living in a studio apartment with a room or whatnot. It's just
Yeah, compared to American prisons, it's pretty darn nice.
it's pretty darn nice. Another
Trees
thing,
outside the window. I mean, yeah.
yeah, and he's a drug addict, okay? And there's this one sequence where he and he's with his girlfriend and she's taking him to rehab. And on the way to rehab, literally, he tries to score some smack. Or I don't even know
Yep.
what the term is. He just tries to score some drugs on the way,
Yep.
in front of the cameraman, in front of the director Benjamin Ree, in front of his girlfriend, and on the way to get treated. And it just, you really see how down in the dumps he is in this movie. And it's, I'm not going to say what else happens, but there's a lot of really compelling moments. And there's the way the movie's structured. It's there's a little bit of a manipulation of events which amps up the drama and the manipulation. And I think it's really well done in the sense that it shows how people's perspectives can be really altered by not knowing the full picture of the actual painting of the person. So I think it's a really fantastic, and there's some really highly emotional moments in this movie.
Yep. It's good
So
quality.
so yeah, The Painter and the Thief. That's our pick. I guess that's my pick, and half of my pick, half of Bruce's pick. May 22nd on VOD virtual cinemas and Hulu